are wrong.
You're doing the third right. You're doing it.
You should be cheering, Pierce. Everyone in this
I don't cheer an 11-week blockade of food to an impoverished people.
Should destroy Hamas and should be able to bring the very day. You've been against the government. So you want us to unleash 1,000
You're
reporters.
not banning the international media out of concerns for their safety.
One second, Pierce.
Don't insult my intelligence, Doran.
You asked me about it.
Don't insult my intelligence.
You're asking me questions while I'm speaking.
Don't insult my intelligence. Israel is not banning international media
I'm just trying
out
to
of
provide
concern
an answer,
for
Pierce.
our
I don't feel like
safety.
You are the enemy of America. You are the enemy of America, okay?
Hamas went after civilians, and you're asking me what's the proportional response? Israel's response has been never to go after a civilian, only to go after Hamas terrorists. Now, I've been in Gaza.
All right.
Get him to shut up for a second.
Okay.
And it was Antony Blinken and the State Department weenies like Mr. Rubin who overruled General Milley and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and their advice to wrap up the war.
Piers.
And now hundreds of thousands
names,
of Ukrainians
this is
have
not
been
a
killed in
serious
the
show,
time,
okay? I
along
thought I
with
was on a
tens of
serious
thousands
program.
of Palestinians
You're on a
in
serious
Gaza.
program, and you can respond to it.
You don't call each other weenies on a serious program. Okay?
You've been against the government.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So as you can see on that intro, got a Piers Morgan debate for 1. For 2, we've got a delusionist on the panel. And for 3,
You've been against the government.
this one gets kind of fun. A lot of yelling back and forth.
All right.
Get him to shut up for a second.
Okay.
0 points made when they're yelling back and forth, but however, it is kind of entertaining to listen to.
You're doing it.
And, you know, Piers, it's like he's just sitting back, just watching, laughing, pulling the strings, if you will. Of course, that's what Piers does.
That's what you are.
You know, they argue, oh, this isn't a serious program. I might have to agree about that. To be honest with you, I mean, there are serious discussions, right? And we can derive some really good information and really good context and discuss serious topics from these discussions on Piers Morgan. This is why I cover these, because not only are they fun, but they are a gateway, if you will, to open the door for discussions, get people's takes, you know, how they feel about this and blah, 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 where they're coming from. Make your point, you know, make the argument, do what you got to do.
You've been against the government.
Put it out there, for goodness sakes, and then we can take that and break it down, add to it, take away from it, detract, you know, whatever it may be. And this is what I love doing these, by the way, in case y'all guys haven't noticed yet. I'll cover these every single weekend because they're fun. And, you know, Piers Morgan doesn't do enough of these. If he did, I would cover them every single day. But that might get a little bit redundant, might get a little bit monotonous. You never know, but they're always fun, in my opinion. Do them on the weekends, so it is what it is. But I need y'all to do me a favor and smash that like button. You know, it doesn't matter if you like the video or not. It's actually just doing me a favor. It helps the channel to grow. It helps me to expand. And subscribe if you're new around here, especially if you like to stay up to date with politics, what's going on in the government, what's going on in the world of journalism with the corporate press. They're manipulating you, folks. They are definitely manipulating you. And what we normally do, I make videos every single day. I make 2 videos a day at least, sometimes 3. But we go over the news and we go over the manipulations of the corporate press. And I show you all the manipulations, micro manipulations, nano manipulations, whatever they may be, because they're always trying to tweak phrases, tweak the words, tweak the paragraphs to try to slide you into believing them. That's how I always put it. The corporate press and every single news article just about is begging you to believe them. Believe when we tell you that Joe Biden is fine. That's what they do. And that's what I point out. So y'all make sure and check out my regular videos. So subscribe. Sign up. Become a member. That's a really good way to help me deliver that news and those manipulations to you guys out there. Also, the best way to actually help me out is right below the video. Share this with everybody, right? Tell your friends, tell your family. Just click that little button and share this. Just boom, outright. It would mean a lot to me if you guys could do that, but I know I've been rambling. So without any further ado, let's jump in to the debate, y'all.
A lot of oncologists, like Ezekiel Emanuel, have come out and said it is simply impossible for this not to have been detected a lot earlier than not just last week, but years ago. And especially if you're the President of the United States and you're having medicals all the time. Has there been, do you think, a massive cover-up here? Or is this conspiracy theory mayhem running riot?
I haven't the faintest idea. I'm not a doctor. I really wouldn't know. What I do know, and what I think is getting lost in this discussion, is that as a mistake as it was to run for re-election, as he did for several months and then stood down, President Biden had a good presidency, and our country was better off for it. And all this discussion of performativeness about communications and was he an older man and this and that, he made good decisions. He made good judgments. The United States and the West were better off because he decided to stand up to Vladimir Putin after his invasion of Ukraine.
Are you sure about that?
And I don't think there's any other Democrat who would have done what Joe Biden did, which is stand up to Putin, gather world leaders together, and really put the pressure on in defense of Ukraine. Whether the Trump would have, I think, is doubtful. And I suspect that some of the other Democrats, as Barack Obama was in 2014, would have been reluctant to stand up to Vladimir Putin. So the big issue of our time is not what did or didn't happen during the oncology exams. It's whether we're going to stand up to face a Russia that is militarized, that is supported by the world's largest military buildup in the world in China. And is the West going to respond to that? And these are the issues that I focus on.
That, my friends, is called dodging the question. Just blatantly and outright dodging the question. Yeah, let's not talk about where we could get absolutely pummeled by reality, and let's talk about something else. But this guy's just an absolute delusionist, and there's a little bit more to this clip, so let's keep on going.
I don't really know.
But aren't the two, I mean, look, yeah, but James, aren't the two inexorably interlinked in the sense that the person charged with making potentially enormous decisions in how you combat somebody like Vladimir Putin, potentially even down to considering the deployment of nuclear weapons, that person, it was pretty obvious for the last 2 years of his presidency, his cognitive decline was rapid, his physical decline was rapid. And this new book by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, which is a #1 bestseller now, but this new book, it carries just endless revelations, very well-sourced revelations, that Biden simply wasn't fit for office in that last period of his presidency. So I don't disagree with you that the situation with Putin was an enormously important thing, or that Biden went some way to trying to tackle him in Ukraine. Where I dispute is the fact that it's sort of either or. To me, if the President of the United States is not fit for office and he has to deal with someone like Vladimir Putin, that's an incredibly dangerous situation for the United States and the world. Do you accept that?
And not in the least. Joe Biden was president for 4 years.
So hang on, dude. You don't accept the fact that a frail, obviously cognitive declining old man talking about war, trying to discuss war plans with a dictator is not a dangerous situation? And the fact that one misstep in negotiations could mean just all-out war? Okay.
I worked very, very closely with him as a young man, and I didn't work with him as president. But Tony Blinken, who was the Secretary of State, did. I spoke to him yesterday about this, knowing these kind of questions are coming out. And it was his observation that when it came to decisions about war and peace, nuclear threats or no nuclear threats, gathering together the West, dealing with Netanyahu's government, dealing with the Chinese, that he never observed a failure of judgment on the part of the president. Was he performatively always perfect? Clearly not. He made that decision for himself that he couldn't run for another term. But to jump to that and say because he might have had a prostate cancer diagnosis, he wasn't fit to be president is a real big leap for me. I believe President Biden made very good decisions in foreign affairs where I know something about it, where I observed the decisions, where I've been in this business for 35 years. And I know how hard it is for presidents to make decisions, to both confront Putin, but avoid the risk of nuclear war. President Trump is obsessed with the risk of nuclear war. If you ask him what pissed him off about Zelensky in the White House office was when Zelensky suggested there were risks to the United States. So Joe Biden stood up to Vladimir Putin, gathered the West, confronted Russia, and avoided the risk of world war using the subtlety and decision-making that he had as president. And his Secretary of State has testified to me, and I believe him, this is an honest man, that he never observed in the conduct of foreign affairs. In the conduct of foreign affairs, he never observed the decision-making cognitive failures that are being attributed to Joe Biden because he had a bad debate night or was an old man who occasionally did forget names, who occasionally had a bad memory. But when he was confronted with crises, remember, adrenaline flows when you're confronted with a crisis. We all know that, Piers. You know that perfectly well.
Well, yeah, you do.
Can be
but
very
honestly,
tired and old, but adrenaline flows when you're president, and you make good decisions. And I've had that testified to me by Secretary Blinken, and I trust him.
You know, I seriously don't think that anybody believes that a prostate cancer would make Joe Biden not able to be the president of the United States. I think it's his cognitive decline that made him unable to be the president of the United States. Like, what is wrong with this guy here? Like, he's going on, like this hero worship, if you will, of Joe Biden when there was clear cognitive decline. There was clearly something wrong with Joe Biden. He shook hands with invisible people, for goodness sakes. Didn't know where he would easily get lost on stage, go off in the wrong direction. He was falling over. He was constantly slipping and stumbling over his own words. And then what did we get from the media? Oh, well, that's his stutter, his lifelong stutter, although which easily debunked. You can go back and, you know, Joe Biden has done a lot of media tours, for goodness sakes. 50 years in office, you're going to. You can go back and look at any interview from any point in his life, including when he was vice president, and you do not hear that stutter at all. That was a blatant lie. And for them to come out and say, oh, Joe Biden's a dynamo in the background. What? Well, then how come, like, the statistic reality of that, how come that anytime he's in front of a camera, he's not a dynamo at all? And just so happens that when he's off camera, he's just great. He's just fine. Like, every time he got in front of a camera, there was always some sort of...
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him...
What must be what? I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
Let me start off with two words. Made in America.
Like, what? What are we even talking about here? We saw this early on before he even became into office, for goodness sakes, while he was still running his campaign. The entirety of the punditry on the right was like, why are they running this guy? He's running his campaign from the basement, for goodness sakes. And then we learn all this stuff from Jake Tapper's book, who, by the way, which is fascinating, you know, one of the people that helped to cover this up is now coming out and saying, we were fooled. That's what the whole media is doing. And they wonder why the media has completely eroded their trust. They cannot tell us the truth whatsoever. And then to go on to all this stuff, well, oh, Joe Biden stood up to Putin. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? He really stood up to Putin? Do you really think that's what that is? Do you think that us sitting over here in our ivory tower, of course, from the rest of the world, obviously, the United States, in our ivory tower, shipping weapons to Ukraine, is standing up to Putin? Do you think that's what that is? No, that's clearly not standing up to Putin. Oh, let's impose some sanctions. Is that standing up to Putin? No, what a real leader does is go and get down there in the dirt and gets in front of these people and gets in between them and says, stop. Like what Donald Trump is attempting to do. This guy's fear-mongering about, well, Trump wouldn't be able to do... Yeah, Putin would have never invaded under Donald Trump, because he would have saw the military buildup and he would have warned Putin, or he would have went over there, he'd have sent diplomats, he would have done something to try to prevent this. What did we get from the Biden regime? Abso-freaking-lutely nothing. Oh, you better not do it, Putin. That's what we got. That's essentially what we got. You better not do it. Don't do it. Are you freaking kidding me? But we're going to get into more of this because there's a lot more absurdity coming your way, folks.
He called him the Secretary of War. It was based on interviews of him. And they talked about how after Ukraine's biggest success in September of 22, The military, the U.S. military, was recommending that we go to the table now while the Ukrainians are only this far behind, and it doesn't get too much worse. And it was Antony Blinken and the State Department weenies like Mr. Rubin who overruled General Milley and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and their advice to wrap up the war.
Piers.
And now hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have been killed in the meantime.
Okay? I thought I was on a serious program.
You're on a serious program, and you can respond to it.
You don't call each other weenies on a serious program, okay? So let me answer this point.
That's what the military men call the State Department guys.
No, you called me
that's
that.
A well-known term for the State Department.
You called me that, and it's very juvenile. So let me respond to your substance, which is the part that's interesting. Your basic point is that Ukraine should have been disarmed in advance of Putin's threats, and by us giving them weapons, the few weapons they needed to defend themselves against Putin's invasion, we provoked the invasion. It's NATO expansion provoking the invasion. It's the United States diplomacy provoking the invasion. Nobody ever seems to blame. Nobody seems to blame the person who decided to invade his neighbor, who made a decision to invade his neighbor and used hundreds and thousands of troops to invade their neighbor. And your idea that because we sent a few weapons over, we provoked him is the ultimate in appeasement.
Okay, so I got to interject right quick because this logic just doesn't make any freaking sense. Okay, if we're talking about provoking Putin, right, that means Putin hasn't invaded yet. So how can we blame him for something he hasn't done yet, my guy? Like, we're talking about provoking him to do something which states obviously he hasn't done it yet. So he's talking about blame Putin for an invasion that hasn't happened. That makes absolutely no sense, dude. And that's also ignoring the fact that NATO expansion, that is a provocation, as a matter of fact. Yeah, all of this shipping weapons, that's a provocation. It might not be the whole reason why he done what he did, but it's still pushing the buttons, poking the bear, if you will. Let's keep going.
What you want to do in a situation like this is hopefully give your ally a chance to defend itself. And without the minimal weapons that he got, both from Trump and from Biden, I don't think the Ukrainians would have been able to hold off this Russian offensive. And there's not some magic solution to... And that's a dreamo-vision. It wouldn't have happened. Putin decided to go to war, and we had to confront that. And we were able to confront it, and we gathered the world together to confront it. Unfortunately, the current president has a different approach, and maybe he'll get a deal, and that'll be wonderful. But I don't think so. I think Vladimir Putin has made a decision to run a war economy. And the idea that we provoked Putin into invading Ukraine is an absurdity. This is a man who made a decision to invade his neighbor with hundreds of thousands of troops. He wasn't provoked into it. There was no threat to him.
Began in February 22. Everybody knows that.
He made a decision to invade his neighbor, and we should just confront that and figure out how to respond instead of coming up with loony ideas, loony, not weenie, loony ideas for why this war started. It started because Vladimir Putin invaded his neighbor.
Well,
so this is what the Democrats and all these war hawks and neocons, they want you to believe, that there was no provocation whatsoever, that Putin was over in Moscow one day and just said, I think I'm going to invade Ukraine, and then be unsuccessful in invading Ukraine. What? Like, are you freaking kidding me with this? This guy is insane. These people are psychotic for thinking that the American people are going to buy into this. Of course, look, I get it. Some people have bought into this. There are people out there in the world that will listen to somebody and just believe what they say. They won't think about what's going on. They won't make any logical deductions about what was just said. They won't do any of that. They would just be like, oh, that's what happened. All of a sudden, one day, Putin, with his conquest, just decided, I'm going to invade Ukraine, and decided to invade Ukraine. Oh, and if we hadn't shipped a bunch of weapons over there... What? None of it makes any sense, if you ask me, right? These people, they want you to believe a delusion because these people are delusionists. They have no idea that the American people can actually think for themselves. They think you're stupid. It's called gaslighting, where you're seeing what's going on, and then they're telling you that's not what's actually happening. They want you to believe something totally different. Well, you know what, folks? There's history books. We have the internet these days, and it's easily fact-checkable. Easily, we can look at a situation and see, hang on, maybe that was a provocation, right? And he's trying to say that nothing in the world could have stopped Putin from doing this, right? Trying to say, oh, well, Joe Biden should be praised as the hero for standing up to the Russian dictator over there, when he did nothing to prevent this at all, except say, from his ivory tower, by the way, don't do that. And he says, oh, Donald Trump has a different approach. Yeah, okay, let's look at that different approach. What is Donald Trump doing? He's getting in between the two, saying, stop. As a matter of fact, he's not just sucking up to Zelensky and admonishing Putin. No, he's getting in between. He's telling them both to sit down and shut up. Let's come to the table and have a discussion and stop the killing. That's called diplomacy, my guy. Have you ever heard of that? He claims to be a foreign policy expert. I have serious doubts. But let's keep going.
What you are doing, and what Cenk is doing, is you are perpetuating
them,
the rule
you
of
sicko.
Hamas. Did you not see Odeh Raby? Do you know who that is, Cenk? Cenk, who's Odeh Raby? Do you know Odeh Raby? Did you speak about Odeh Raby, Cenk? I didn't see him on your social media. Odeh
Listen,
Raby
here's what
was
I'm
a
speaking about, how the fact that your government is starving 2.2 million people right now.
Gaza.
You're starving
Hamas
the babies,
are the ones
you
that
monster.
are torturing the Gazan
Why don't you
people.
stop? You're
and
the
he
terrorist.
And 10,000 people
You're
came
the
to his
terrorist.
funeral
Your
when his
governments are
body was
terrorists
dragged
that are
through
trying
the
to kill
streets
2
of
million
Gaza.
people right
His
now.
parents
Stop
received his body
starving
with
babies,
a
you
noose around
terrorists.
his neck and his
You're
underwear.
sick.
And
You're
all of those
deranged.
people, 5
And
were killed, and dozens
stop with your
and dozens of them have
propaganda.
gone missing.
You know who's the worst
but
terrorist
you
in the
would
world?
decide to keep
Netanyahu.
Hamas in power. And the reason is you've never been on the ground.
This
you
is
support
you know why I
David
yell on
Duke.
this program?
You're an
Because
anti-Semite
guys like
at your
this do
core.
nonstop
You care nothing
propaganda,
else about
and they
the
won't
Muslim
stop
world. You
talking.
don't care about
They
women's
talk
rights.
over everyone
you call
else.
blacks
If you're
by
going to
the
talk over
N-word.
everyone
you
else,
support
I'm going
David
to talk
Duke.
over you.
You've never been on the ground,
starved
and
more
all you
people
do is
than
spend every day
anyone else
attacking
in
Israel.
the world. Israel has killed more journalists than anyone else in the world. You're not going to talk over me. You've got these people that are
This is
starving,
coming from
and
the
Hamas
man
did not make
that
that decision.
talks to
Hamas is
David
terrible.
Duke, calls
Israel
blacks
made that
by
decision.
the N-word,
But whenever you start
calls
talking about
Jews
Israel,
by the
guys
J
like
word,
this
and
come
doesn't
on
respect
shows
women,
and
Jake, why
never
should we
stop
believe
talking.
don't talk over each other, because no one can hear it.
Israeli propaganda, and I'm sick of it.
All right.
Get him to shut up for a second and let other people talk. All they do is Israeli propaganda. It is a fact that they are starving the children of Gaza right now. It is a fact that they have killed over 53,000 people. And he says, 1,200 is terrible. It is terrible what Hamas did on October 7th. But to say that 1,200 people killed and
you don't think it's terrible,
children
Cenk?
killed is
Since
terrible.
the very
but
day you've been against the government providing the bombs to Israel needs to fight its wars.
Are
You
not
sit
terrible.
and scream.
That
You never
12,000
ever blame
babies and
Hamas.
children
Where's
killed
Hamas,
is
Cenk?
not terrible.
If it was up
Shows
to
what a
you, you'd be
monster
leaving the
terrorist
Gazan
you are.
people
Go ahead,
under the regime
you
of Hamas.
propagandist.
You are the
You
enemy.
sick,
You are
evil
the enemy
person.
of the Gazan people.
You are the enemy of America. You are the enemy of America, okay? You got us to fight Iraq.
You
want
call
us to fight
yourself
the
a
Iran
young
war.
Turk.
You've taken $300
You have labeled
billion.
yourself a young
You
Turk.
starved children
the Turks
to
were
death.
the people who
You are the worst
massacred
terrorist
the
of my
Armenians.
lifetime.
You led 1 million Armenians
I
into the Syrian
recognize the
desert
Armenian
and watched
genocide.
them die.
In fact, the
and you
Armenian
proudly
genocide, you on
name
your
your
personal,
show
you know, the
Young
Armenian
Turks.
genocide
You should
is
be ashamed of yourself.
exactly what
yes,
Israel
you know
is
what?
doing
You're
to the
pro-American.
Palestinians now.
David
Ethnic
Duke is a
cleansing,
pro-American.
driving them,
I get it,
killing
Cenk.
them, and
David
murdering
Duke
them.
is the American.
Israel is the
and
largest
the
terrorist
evangelist
organization
you call
in the
them
world
the
right now.
All right.
Us
All right,
funding
that's
them
enough.
makes us
That's enough.
morally culpable.
All right.
Yeah, it didn't stop there, by the way.
Reach the
It's
people
an
and not Hamas.
unsolvable
Hamas
riddle.
would disappear in 3 months. We talked about President
They're
Biden.
never going to kill enough Palestinians to satiate
We have
them.
250
This has nothing to do with Hamas.
We
I
will
don't
defeat
think this
Hamas.
war strategy-
Hamas is a fearmonger.
There's 2
All right,
million
we're gonna leave it
person
there.
in charge of
It's
World
We're going to
War
leave it
II.
there, but there is no
punishment.
there is
It's a
no
clear
actual
war crime.
evidence
What
you
you're
are
saying is we
defeating.
should leave the Nazis
Genocider.
There
in
is
power.
no evidence you are defeating
guys are
Hamas,
fan
and that
of
is my
genocide.
problem with what is going on.
Piers,
If
at
there
the
was
end of
clear
World War
evidence
II,
you were winning,
there were many
great.
voices
There
that
isn't.
said you cannot destroy the Nazis. We would be saluting the Third Reich today if we listened to those people. You are trying to convince Israel and the world we can't destroy Hamas. Well, you are
You're
wrong.
doing
And you know
the
who you were
Third
wrong
Reich.
about, Piers?
You're doing
Not
it.
only about Israel.
I can't
you are
stand this
wrong about
propaganda.
the Gazan
You're
people.
the one starving
the Gazan people
babies.
have
Don't call
died in the
anyone else the
streets
Third Reich.
trying to tell
Don't
you
call anyone
that
the Third
Hamas
Reich
is
when
at
you're
fault.
starving babies
Allah
to death.
Akbar, kill
Have you no
Hamas.
humanity?
Allah Akbar,
Have you no
Hamas are the
morality?
terrorists.
Have you no
Odeh
decency?
Raby.
Have you no decency?
Gazans are dying
you do not
here
speak
so
for
that you
Jewish
will
people.
hear the voice. I don't expect this anti-Semite to hear the voice. But you, Piers,
I'm going to end it there.
Disgusting person.
I'm going to end it there before blood vessels get burst.
Pro-genocide, pro-ethnic cleansing.
Okay.
That's what you are.
We're going to leave it.
You're disgusting.
We're going to leave it there.
I'm sorry. I love JinU for some reason, right? Like, we disagree on a lot of stuff. We do agree on several key issues. But I just love, you're doing the Third Reich. You're a disgusting person. I just love it. I love this dude, man. I don't know why he tends to act that way. He thinks, I guess, that if he screams over everybody else that he'll be taken more seriously. I'm not sure. But I love his antics. I love how he's so animated. And I guess that's a little bit of his charm, right? He does articulate pretty well when he's a serious person, and he can be, despite what you just saw, he can be a serious person. As I'm sure you guys probably know, he is quite of a serious person. But getting into Israel Gaza, like that's a whole terrible situation, right? Like, this isn't going good for Israel at all. As a matter of fact, Israel is looking kind of bad, and I've kind of been back and forth this whole time. When this thing first started, I was all for Israel. I'm like, go do your thing, root out Hamas. And I still hold that sentiment, get rid of Hamas. However, it's been a while now. It's been a pretty good little while, and it's not working. Just clearly not working at all. What can we do different? Let's have some sort of a meeting or something like that. We can come in, we can huddle up here and think, okay, so this clearly isn't working. What can we do to change the situation on the ground, right? Like, come on, these people are starving. You're bombing civilians, for goodness sakes. Little kids are getting blown apart. My goodness, the killing needs to stop, for crying out loud, right? Like, once again, get rid of Hamas. That's always like the first thing, get rid of Hamas for sure. But how can we mitigate the utter genocide that's going on? And that's clearly what it is, right? Like, I know a lot of people are like, no, there's no genocide. Well, definitionally, there kind of is. There kind of is, right? And now I understand, Israel they got their propaganda out there, and I know not all of it's really propaganda. They are attempting to minimize civilian casualties. However, they're not doing a good job of that, for crying out loud. I know they send out these flyers that say, hey, we're going to bomb this place, blah, 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 blah. And they end up bombing that place. And what does Hamas do? Right? Hamas, they'll steal all those flyers and not notify the people in the building that it's going to get bombed here in a second, just so those people will get blown up, just to win the PR battle, right? A lot of this is intentional on behalf of Hamas to make Israel look bad. Let's not forget this, okay? Not all of it, right? But some of it is that. As a matter of fact, this is a very, very convoluted situation. We're always dealing with the fog of war. We never know exactly what's going on. It all comes down to, who do we trust? Who do we trust? That's the key issue here. Who do we trust? Now, we can look and see that what Israel is doing is, it's getting to beyond the pale part. We're in that territory at this point, because, yeah, sure, they may try to minimize civilian casualties, but are they minimizing civilian casualties? It doesn't really look like it, to be honest. Does not really look like it. And that's a bad thing, because I like Israel. I'm a Christian, for goodness sakes, right? We think of that land, that whole area, as the Holy Land, for crying out loud. That's where our Savior, our Lord Jesus Christ, was born, raised, and ultimately murdered. Yeah, murdered. He died for us, for goodness sakes, and we believe that. So we view that as the Holy Land. We don't like to see it just filled with tumult, for goodness sakes, all in chaos and turmoil just going on. We don't like to see that. But, something has to give here. These people of Palestine, they need their freedom. They need some self-governance, for goodness sakes, without Hamas intervention, right? We think these people can govern themselves, for crying out loud. However, they need to have that ideology rooted out. That's not something you can just do with a military, right? So Israel needs to come to terms with that. You cannot root out an ideology with a bullet, with the guns, with bombs, with tank shells, with any of the such. Does not happen. The only way to root out an ideology, in my opinion, is through shaming. Shame these people into oblivion for thinking the way they do, right? But you got to have facts and logic on your side. It can't just be all emotions, right? You've got to have the facts and logic to back that emotion up, right? That's what they got to work in tandem, for crying out loud. You can't just have one or the other. And that seems to be a lot of what's going on here. You got a lot of emotions on one side, and you have a lot of bombs on the other side, for goodness sakes. And it's just not a very good situation. And I see why Chink gets so animated, right? You can see it. There's a lot of death and destruction going on over there, and nobody knows a good way to solve for this situation, right? Like, I can sit here and give you several reasons, or several, pathways, if you will, to resolve the Ukraine-Russia situation, right? My simple one, my very first one, the one that I think might actually work, is allow Russia to have some sort of economic demilitarized zone to give them access to the Black Sea, because that's clearly what this is all about. Economics, for crying out loud. It's all about economics. It's not about conquest. Don't let them people fool you. Russia does not want to reunify the Soviet Union, for crying out loud. I know Putin has said that before. You got to look beyond what people say and think for yourselves. Does he have the ability to reunify the Soviet Union? Absolutely not. Abso-freaking-lutely not. Several of those old Soviet states are NATO members, for crying out loud. They absolutely are. So that's never going to happen. Putin knows this. So think for yourself for a second. Look at what's going on, right? Russia depends greatly on their gas exports, for goodness sakes. And they want access to that Black Sea partially for that reason, right? They also have in Crimea the military base, their biggest naval port. Their Black Sea fleet is based out of Crimea, Sevastopol, I believe. I think. Or is it? I forget what it is. It might not be Sevastopol. I'm not sure right off the top of my head. My memory is kind of wonky at points when I'm trying to discuss this because, this isn't me. This isn't my normal self. I have to get into a mode to come out here and discuss this. And sometimes I get kind of tunnel memory, if you will. I know you may have never heard that term because I think I just made it up, but, kind of combining several different things, but that's neither here nor there. But getting back to Israel, Gaza, right? I've said from the beginning that, well, not from the beginning. I'll take that back. Okay, let me admonish myself for that. Several months afterwards, I said, look, why can't we just send commandos in there? Like, I really wouldn't mind if Israel asked for help from the United States and we sent some of our commando teams to work with the IDF to go in and root out Hamas. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Small units, go and get these guys, minimize civilian casualties. Now, I understand that that's not completely realistic. Because Iran would get involved maybe, and, it might be a big old deal. Might be a bad situation. But even still, it's better than what we have right now, to be honest with you. If at least let's train up some IDF members, they have pretty good commando teams. So why can't we do commando raids? Might take longer. You might suffer more military casualties that way, but at least it's not civilian casualties, right? It's getting to the point now to where, we got to make a decision. How many casualties do we want? Which, that's a bad decision to make, by the way. It's a terrible decision to make. But it kind of comes down to that. How are we going to resolve this? We've got to move forward. We cannot just stay stagnant in a war and to where eventually there's no more Palestinians. All right, I know it goes much deeper than that. There's a lot of economics, a lot of power dynamics going on, especially in Israel with Netanyahu and all that. There's a lot of power struggles, if you will, going on with that. So, there's a lot to look at, and it's not just that simple. You've got to get these people to come to terms with you're losing the PR battle, Israel, and you need to do something to change that. That's it. Do something different. Stop killing so many damn civilians. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one, y'all. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Fill that freaking comment section up with good ideas. There we go. Good ideas. That's what we want for the comment section. I will recourse back with you. And, let's work this thing out somehow. We can work it out, right? Y'all let me know what y'all think. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new around here and you liked what you heard, for goodness sakes. Don't forget, sign up, become a member. I would be over the hill if you guys would sign up and become a member. That would be so great. I would be elated with that. It would help me help you deliver the manipulations and let you, allow for you to see those manipulations just right out in the open, y'all. But y'all do that for me. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.